get started. It's 4 o'clock. We're at the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority Board of Director meeting. It's Monday, April 10th, and we're in the Robert Bob Kroll boardroom. Can I get a roll call?
Mike Jones,
Here.
Bobby Rader,
Here.
Stacy Giomi, Steve Kim. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'll ask for any public comment. I don't think I see any out there, but we'll go through the motion. Having seen none, we'll move on to item 5, approval of minutes of the March 13th, 2023 CTA board meeting. Any board member have any additions, corrections, anything for the meetings from last month? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as recorded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Would any member of the public like anything pulled from the consent agenda for individual discussion? Not seeing any, so any board member like something pulled from the consent agenda for individual discussion? Get a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
All in favor? Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on to item 9, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Carson City Board of Supervisors in regard to issuing a general obligation bond that would fund John D. Winters Centennial Park improvements. I know, David, you've got a little background on this, and I know Jen's been kind enough to come and tell us some more. So, David, why don't I start with you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For the record, David Peterson, Executive Director with Visit Carson City. So, as you all know, the existing bond will make our final payment for the V&T in June, this June. So, we have a unique opportunity to do a new bond issuance to the benefit, I think, of not only our visitors, but also the residents from a Parks Rec open space perspective. And so I don't want to steal Director Budge's thunder, so I might just turn it over to you, Jen, to kind of talk through the conversations that we've had, and I think a really unique and cool opportunity for this board to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on. So with that, Jen, you want to jump in?
Thanks, David. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. Just want to walk through with you a concept that the staff at Parks and Rec came up with and worked with Visit Carson City. We brainstormed a lot of different options based on the potential funding available. This seemed to kind of rise to the top of potential options. There's obviously options throughout the entire city that could be considered, but we thought this had the best impact on tourism as well as for local residents. So this would be at John D. Winters Centennial Park. So just to orient the public and to you, John D. Winters Centennial Park is located on the north end of town off of Arrowhead Drive. It was acquired through a lot of different mechanisms, some through Bureau of Land Management, Recreation Public Purpose Lease, patent process. It includes Upper and Lower Centennial, also includes the Eagle Valley Golf Course. To the west of this is the Capital City Gun Club. We have the archery range to the east, and there's a park or a playground and tennis courts and baseball fields as well. So our proposed project helps resolve a lot of existing issues we have at Centennial Park. If you've gone up to Centennial this year since we've experienced the flooding, you'll see Field 7, almost entirely wiped out. We have a lot of drainage issues. There's also a lot of overdue maintenance and care on the facility in general, and it's not just due to lack of day-to-day maintenance or effort, but over time, you really have to laser level fields. You have to put in a lot of time and effort. And before this concept came up, we had planned on doing sort of a Band-Aid project, which would be about 75,000 per field to laser level and bring in new material. But it only gives you about a 3 to 5 year range, closer to the 3-year range. So the 75,000 times 4 fields, and then that still didn't even address the drainage issues or some of the high winds that we have up there as well. If you've gone to any kind of tournament up there, even if you've gone to the playground, you know how windy it can get, and most of the infield actually ends up in the bleachers. So it's an ongoing maintenance challenge up there. So to kind of walk you through what we have in mind, this project would really improve the safety and playability of the court or of the fields. It would reduce the potential liability of the city and the CTA and to tournament organizers, which is great. I think it will provide a much better user experience for participants and for spectators as well, as I said, with the wind and other things that come up. It will be more playable. It'll have a longer duration. We'll be able to have, we would be able to have, with artificial turf in the yellow there, you would be able to have more playability during the day. You could schedule things closer together. You could also have a longer season. Some winters, we don't have the snow that we experienced this year. So in those drier years when it may still be cold, you could actually play in the winter. Where normally, if it's outside of April through October, this facility is entirely closed. So it really increases your opportunity through artificial turf. To orient you to that picture, I should have started there, so I apologize. The yellow would be artificial turf over the existing fields, and that they're all existing turf right now. And then the blue areas would be drainage improvements, and that captures all of the runoff coming off the hillside there. And it would also help protect the tennis courts as well, because we've had drainage problems at that south end as well. And then the green part is the landscape buffer. So that will help with the prevailing winds and help provide more of a wind buffer, not just to improve the aesthetics of the facility, but it'll really help protect from the wind for spectators and players. So the benefits of this is to reduce turf, reduce maintenance overall for the facility, which would be pretty significant. Just the water irrigation consumption, April through October, is approximately 8 million gallons of water. So that alone, for me, is the primary benefit to the public, because this is not reclaimed water, this is our potable drinking water. So it's a better choice for the community with that. It would reduce our maintenance and our labor, especially we wouldn't require mowing or the maintenance required for those large mowers, which are significant. They're $80,000 to $100,000 plus just to replace those. So the hours on those mowers is significant. And then the irrigation system, obviously that would really reduce everything, because the majority of the landscape improvements would be on like drip, and it wouldn't have the significant sprinkler system and the irrigation system that requires for field use right now. As I mentioned before, you'd be able to schedule more on those fields, and you'd have a longer duration of the season. And then you reduce the impacts for the skin dirt. So the infield maintenance, the regular dragging the fields, watering the infields, all of that in between games that have to happen now, you wouldn't have to have that. There's still a lot of maintenance required with artificial turf, but it's not as robust or significant as the current use now. It would increase our recreation programming, so we would have opportunities to bring other activities up there, and it would provide a safer, consistent playing field for users. Right now, we really struggle with trip hazards, especially in the outfield, and trying to be able to maintain that. It provide alternatives for alternative programming. We've talked about having like cornhole tournaments and futsal and a bunch of other sports than what you see there. So just a concept of how this might work. After we talked to David and Stu and talked with finance, we kind of came up with, I had to resubmit some of my stuff to finance for our budget for next fiscal year, but I think it'll be a really good use. What we would do is the city would contribute, if the Board of Supervisors approves, $300,000, and I put that in our Quality of Life Capital Fund budget request for next year. Quality of life is 1/4 of 1 cent sales tax that was voter approved in the 1990s. So it's good local funding that would contribute toward the project. And what we would like to do is try to get the majority of the bond money on the ground toward construction, and the city would pay for the design costs and also updating the master plan for Centennial, which we currently don't have one, so that would be amazing. And we can identify future improvements that we would have. So the bond funds would generate approximately $4.7 million, depending on the interest that's chosen and the duration of the bond. And that would fund construction of improvements, and we would purchase the maintenance equipment and materials and supplies needed to maintain artificial turf, because we currently don't have any artificial turf in our existing park system. So we would need to get a drive or tow behind sweeper. We need to stockpile the fill material that goes within that artificial turf, and a machine to apply the disinfectant and disinfectant spray. That's a regular practice that you have to do. And then as far as timeline, what we would require would be Board of Supervisors approval. After this board makes a recommendation to the board, they would do that at the April 20th tentative meeting, and then in May again at the final budget meeting. The bond would take about 6 to 9 months to work with our bond consultant through finance. And in July 1, we could retain a design consultant concurrently while the bond is moving forward to work on design, to work on the master plan. Those two processes would go simultaneously. We wouldn't see a change to those upper fields at all, but we want to make sure that the rest of the park and any future opportunities to expand, especially on Lower Centennial, is captured through that master plan process. The construction could take place after talking to finance in early 2024 if bonding and design are complete. So we could get going on that design pretty easy. I don't think it'd be a complicated design. I think the drainage is probably the most complicated component. And then just trying to find out what product we would want to use for artificial turf, what has the best warranty, the best success rate, and looking at all of the maintenance equipment. And then the bond costs associated with the debt service is, from what finance told us, approximately $405,000 a year. So currently the same payment that you're already paying right now in your budget. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. No, I think this is a great use of funds, and you mentioned early on it has a tourism impact, and it also has the local community impact, and those fields are starting to look a little rough, and we hear it from our softball teams that come in, and when we do the tournaments, that they're looking other places now. So I think it's a great project. I'm all for it. With the Lower Centennial, is that, can you go into a little more detail about that? Is that is that the 200 by 500?
Jen, is that where the bigger, when we were chatting with Nick, the
Where you could do
multi-purpose, like
not
indoor-
only softball, but soccer, and lacrosse?
So Lower Centennial's right here. You can look on the screen. I don't know if you can see the cursor, but it's that bottom southern circle. Right now, we have some fields there that typically used to be for overflow for the softball tournaments, and we've had irrigation problems down there. We've had flooding issues down there. We've had a lot of wear and tear issues. There's a lot of drainage from the golf course that goes right over there as well. So that's an area that the staff have a lot of great ideas of potentially doing some artificial turf, but a flat field so they could be used multi-purpose, and you could put anchors in the ground to put goals in different areas. You could use it for ball fields versus soccer or lacrosse, and just really have diverse use of those areas, and also good for overflow for special events. So that's sort of what we were looking at. Unfortunately, the funding we're talking about today would probably only be about a quarter of what we estimated what we would need for Lower Centennial, and we would have to look into some grants to be able to do that. But they would easily qualify for Land and Water Conservation Fund, probably some tourism grant opportunities and some other funding. But we'd like to kind of flesh that out through the master plan process.
All right, I think Board Member Gielmi, you have a question?
I do. Thank you. I've played on, so the infield is also turf. I've played on fields where the infield is actual dirt
Yeah.
and the outfield is turf, but I've never seen a field where the infield is also turf. And so what does it look like? I'm just curious how it plays.
Great.
Do you know? Have you played
Yeah.
on it? Yeah.
I know this space pretty well. It's
Okay.
a good thing. And adding to that, my question would be, am I not on?
He's on.
Yeah.
He's green.
The question I had, I think it's obviously a great thing that we want to do as well, but a two-part question. One, can we time it so we don't displace a lot of events? And two, have you considered lining it for anything more than softball or baseball?
I haven't thought about your second question, but I think that's something we could definitely look at. And we might be able to do that through the master plan process. I don't want a master plan to delay this project. I want this to almost be shovel-ready when that bond money comes
I
through.
understand, yeah.
And as far as the timing to not displace groups, if we got design through and the bond through, this can be a winter construction. We don't have to
Yeah.
wait for temperatures like you can't have to with so many construction projects.
And
So,
most of the dirt work is done.
yeah. And as far as the turf infields, I did talk to Tony Pele, he's the Parks and Recreation Director in Sparks, so over Golden Eagle
Mhm.
Regional Park. And then he talked about their approach for like the infields. Obviously, you get more wear and tear in those areas, and they would replace, the pitcher's mound and where home plate is pretty frequently. But the other areas, they got over 10 years of use for the infield, which is great. And then obviously, as the further you go out, the more durable that is. And if you have good regular maintenance practices and equipment, we can get even more years out of it.
So we can build the maintenance into the city's 1/8 cent sales tax. I mean, it would qualify for maintenance, out of the
Ab-
maintenance portion of that, correct?
Absolutely. It would qualify under quality of maintenance or quality of capital.
okay.
Both would. What I'd like to do is, if this goes through, is, future years out, we figure out how many years do we have to replace the infield? And if it's 5 or 8 years or whatever that might be, we do it like depreciation, just like a vehicle would be.
Right.
And we build that into quality of life as our depreciation fund.
Because the only reluctance I have is that we're spending, whatever, $5 million on a product that isn't going to last the length of the bond. In other words, in totality, it will last, but the individual components are not going to last 20 years. You're not going to get 20 years out of the outfield.
Yeah.
Well, you might. I guess you might.
Yeah.
But particularly, I guess, if you can replace parts of it. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the only concern I have in the back of my head. We're bonding for something that may not last the full amount of time that the bond exists. But you feel confident that you can address that through depreciation
I
and the
do.
existing budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think if we start out really well with good equipment and the equipment that we need and not Band-Aid that piece.
Yeah.
And then if we can build that into our depreciation account,
Yeah.
if you will, and then I think
And the
that,
field prep is important. I know that. I know that you want to make sure that it shouldn't be hard, but, you got to pull up the grass
yeah,
but still, you got to make sure that the underlayment is correct.
Yep.
Would the existing signs get upgraded? Did you kind of figure that into that?
well, we weren't sure what the end dollar amount was going to be,
Right.
but we are estimating about $1 million a field because the fields are so large, and
Right.
that's sort of what we're running. So that extra money will have to go toward, the landscaping and the drainage work.
Okay.
And then if we see those numbers coming in and we need to do some maybe alternatives or something, we could maybe supplement with some quality of life capital that's undesignated.
Because
to
the
try to
conduit
bridge
is
that
there
gap.
for the signs. It's just
Absolutely.
replacing the signs that
Yeah.
would need to be done.
Yeah, and I think maybe the following fiscal year, another thing we could do is upgrade the lighting there so it's not so intrusive.
Yeah.
Great, better for play, but doesn't, light the entire city like
Yeah.
it does right now, like a runway. So, I mean, there's definitely some other improvements we'd like to have.
Okay.
Obviously, the fields are the have-to-have priority.
Yeah. Well, signage would be next before lighting for me because it's, I think it's kind of critical for games. People enjoy it. And talk to me about heat, playing in the summer months and because some of the fields I played on in Vegas, and it's been years, are hot.
Yeah.
So is that an issue or has turf come farther than that in the years that,
I think
it's probably been 7 or 8 years since I
I
played
think
in
it's a valid question,
Vegas.
and I think it has come a lot further down the pike. We're going to really have to look at product and how that impacts
Yeah.
it. Obviously, we're not Vegas, and we don't have the
Right.
duration of the heat, so you can adjust your scheduling around that, and there's ways to cool it down. I've seen people out at Golden Eagle trying to cool it down with water
Right,
and then things like
exactly.
that, but it's not ideal, I think.
So
But-
would you leave water in places to be able to do that if we needed to?
Absolutely, because
Strategically?
we would want to be
Okay.
able to clean it and we would want to be able to
Right.
do other maintenance practices, and you'll have the landscaping around there as well
Right,
to
okay.
bring that up. And those all will all have water.
I think that's it. The cleaning, dust, dirt, et cetera, sort of comes up with the pelletizer, whatever you call it, that sweeper.
Crumb,
also-
crumb rubber, I
Right,
think.
yeah. But that also cleans as well when you go over it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, yeah, no, I think it's a no-brainer. I think that used to be, that field used to be a star in the region, and it really is just, it's gone downhill through use, which is what we want, If it's,
Sort of a
if
good
it's gonna
problem.
go downhill, it's because it's been overused probably.
Yeah.
Which is, which is good, so, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? If I can get a motion?
Sure. I am looking for the motion in front of me. Stand by. Well, I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that we proceed, or they proceed with bonding for the construction of Centennial Park as presented. John D. Winters Park, sorry.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Jen. With that, we'll move on to item 10, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed one-time 3% cost of living increase, or COLA, starting on July 1st, 2023. I know Chris is going to give us the background, but, I think this is when policies and procedures were redone in, I think, 17. There's no mechanism to do a COLA increase for the Visit Carson City, and like there is with most businesses have already done that, and I think public entities too. So Chris, why don't you give us the detail?
So I'll start with the staff summary. The CTA Board approved the current Employee Benefits and Policies and Procedures Manual on July 10th of 2017. The current manual does not include cost of living increases, and this agenda item is consideration for a proposed one-time proposal of 3% cost of living. And I did some research in the CTA's payroll. The last COLA that was received by a CTA staff member was in 2008. So we haven't done a COLA since then. And then when we had COVID, the staff took a 5% pay cut for 6 months. And then they also took 1 year without getting their merit increases that they normally would have gotten. So this proposal is just for a one-time COLA that would happen July 1st. And the explanation of impact is for the whole agency, including all the increases in the Medicaid and all the other benefits. So this would be what would cost us overall for the fiscal year 24. It's $21,605 difference.
Questions from the board? No, I think it's, again, probably overdue. Yeah, but I think it's worthy and it's the right thing to do. So with that, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-time 3% COLA effective July 1st, 2023.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. David, we go to Executive Director.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Comments?
We'll go ahead and move on to 11A, Executive Director update. So I just have 3 quick things for the board. Part of the team will be at Rural Roundup this week, which is the Travel Nevada's Rural Tourism Conference, which has not taken place since 2019. So I'm very excited that this is finally off the ground, and looking forward to some great content down there. Next week is the International Trail Summit in Sparks, and we will have a booth. And Jen left, but I want to thank her team as well as the Muscle Powered folks, because they're going to be manning the booth all week, since we have a lot going on with Mark Twain Days starting on Friday. So it's a nice collective effort with the city and Muscle Powered to pull off the show next week in Sparks. And then I had a wonderful meeting last week with some of the friends of the museum, Nevada State Railroad Museum, and they want to bring a Great Western Rail Car roundup here in September of 2024. So the timing of this couldn't be any better, because former member Reynolds asked about what am I doing to help offset the loss of the air races instead starting next year. And this opportunity sort of landed in my lap last week. I met with these folks and Dan and Adam at the Railroad Museum, and they want to do this from a branded perspective. So we would have it like Great Western Steam Up presents the Great Western Rail Car Roundup, so we can use that branding, that name recognition. And I'm excited about the prospect of this becoming an event here in Carson City. Then they're going to shift it in 2026 to Boulder City, and then come back to Carson City 2 years later, so we can kind of work in the steam up in between this rail car roundup. So there'll be more to come on this front, but I just had this meeting last week. We're working through those dates. Would be roughly, I want to say 19, 20, 21, 22 of September 2024. So I think we have a really cool opportunity. They're looking at beating the attendance of 7,600 people that came for the steam up, pushing to 8,000 tickets is what their goal would be, which I think is incredible, quite frankly. There'll be a really neat photo opportunity, and in talking with the team, it sounds like that may be a great revenue opportunity to have a day where these really amazing, these rail cars, they're like, the Goose is one of them, is a famous thing called the Goose, I guess. They're shaped like trucks, different types of vehicles, and at some point, possibly next month, it might be June, I will have these folks come in front of the board just to kind of lay this out and put together a nice presentation. This obviously couldn't do it for the meeting today, but anyway, I'm excited about this. I think this is going to be a really, really cool opportunity at the Railroad Museum. So that's yes, go ahead.
So they would, like the steam engines, they would bring in rail cars
Yes.
from the whole region.
All of North
wherever they
America.
could, yeah.
So right now, they're looking at 10 for sure. But, I almost forgot. Okay, the other really cool thing, speeders. So they asked
Not
me.
Speedos.
Not Speedos. You
Okay.
can wear your Speedo on the Speed Racer if you would like. You're going fast, so just be careful. They would like to work collaboratively with the V&T Railway Commission as well to allow people to take speeders up and down the track, which I think would be really, really cool. So 20 people at a time. So there's kind of two pieces to this. There's the rail cars, motor cars, depending on what your definition is, and then speeders as well, where we could take people up and down the track, which that would really be cool. And the beauty of it is, with it being September, we won't have the issue that we had with the steam up. 4th of July weekend is a super busy weekend. It is for Tom Gray. It was a resource issue, right? Which is why we couldn't have the trains running, and we will not this 4th of July, but this should not be a problem at all to integrate things and experiences out at the depot. So I couldn't be more excited about that. We're actually pulling the Railroad Museum together with the V&T, and hopefully that'll help with educating people that they're two different places, they're two different experiences, and if you just did one, you didn't do the other, and the confusion around that. So I think there's some really cool opportunities for this event. So I'm excited. And the lead time on this, we're a year and a half out, plus or minus, to get started on this. So we're not trying to cram this into 7 months before the event that took place last July, right? We have plenty of lead time for it. So good stuff all around, and I'll keep everybody posted. I know they're excited about coming in front of this body to give us an update, and maybe we'll try to do that May or June, whenever it makes sense.
That would give us something basically every 2 years.
That's my hope. Yeah, that's the goal, is to try to figure this out. Yeah.
If we do the steam up, you think there's any chance of moving that to September?
it was a different group of friends of, but
Yeah.
I did say that to them. July is just not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they agree in principle. That's a super busy weekend. So we lose so much to the other areas because we're sold out, right? So let's figure out a weekend where we've got the rooms to offer here in Carson City and move the event around. And that follows with our strategic special event strategy as well. So yes, I did say that to them, but they're not necessarily the direct friends of for Steam Up, but yeah, we did talk about that. So that's all I have. Any questions on?
No, I think when we did our download of the Steam Up, this kind of fits the bill of expanding on it.
Yeah.
So, and
Awesome.
good opportunity.
Yeah, and I should say that Dan told me last week, Dan Thielen, who's the director of NSRM, they made money unexpectedly on the Great Western Steam Up. So that's really that's the driving force behind this, and having a different, and it's a different group of people, believe it or not. This is a totally different subset of, I guess we'll say, railroad enthusiasts, but they're not steam people. It's like they're the opposite of steam people. So it's a completely different, I think, audience that we're going to be exposing Carson City to. So, but that's the idea. Yeah, if we could every couple of years cycle between the two, oh my God, I think that'd be wonderful for Carson City. So
Exposing and Speedos kind of go together.
I'm the speed racers.
Right.
Yes, we'll have competitions. So yes, I see Bobby snickering, so she's all for it. Yeah. All right. Well, wonderful. I will move on to 11B, our transient occupancy tax actual versus forecast. So in your packet on the big sheet, we did get everybody in, which was wonderful. Thank you, Lodging Properties, for February. So we wound up 12.66% ahead of last February, 2022. Beat our projection. So if you recall last month, I did go ahead, make a small adjustment to go plus 5% February through June, with February coming in at 12.66. I did bump up March through June to 7.5% increase over the prior fiscal year. So today we're looking at about 28.8 million. Remember, this is total taxable revenue, not just our 11% of that number, but that would result in us beating the budget by little over 9.1, almost 9.2%, and we would beat prior fiscal year by 8.2%. Any questions on this? Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to 11C, Events and Sales Update. Mr. Wexler, take it away, sir.
Stu Wexler, Event and Sales Manager, Business Carson City. I am just going to do some recapping because it's been a while and I've been to a few shows, so I just wanted to go over them. But I did want to expound on what David was saying, in that some of the shows that I've been to, one of the main attractions seems to be the V&T Railroad. So I think something like what he was talking about would be just a real bonus to add that as to some of the shows that are coming in, especially what I'm seeing is international traveler. A very big interest in a lot of history, but the V&T Railway. So something like that, I think, would just be just added bonus to what we're seeing now. So just to recap, so I've been to ABA, the Go West, and then we'll talk about some of the events coming up. So I was in Detroit back in February, and what we did there is we talked to a lot of people, had a lot of appointments, had about 30 appointments. You get about 7 minutes with each appointment. And what I've seen, that was my first show, but what I've seen is there's a lot of interest in expanding to the west. A lot of the coaches like to stay East Coast, Midwest, in that area. But I think now with the advent of what's happening post-pandemic, we see a lot of interest in everyone coming to the West Coast and particularly to our state and our region in northern Nevada. So I had about 30 appointments. I followed up with all of them as soon as I was done with the show. There was some interest in bringing coaches here, a lot in 24, 25, more so obviously than 23 because it does take a while. and everything is happening at a little bit slower pace. So, and then next year, the ABA is going to be in Louisiana, so they're seeing more expansion that way too, where the city, where they're having the shows. And then I was in Anchorage, and it was an amazing place. Anchorage had about almost 50 appointments, and there was a lot of interest in our area. And as David mentioned, I believe at the last meeting I wasn't here, next year we're going to have the Go West Summit in Tahoe, which is going to be huge for this whole area. There's already plans for post-fam trips, so there's a lot of planning that's going to be going on with the ABA being in Tahoe. Obviously, for us, being so close to that area is going to be enormous and a huge bonus. So that's going to be going on for the next year. They will be involved as far as the RTT, the lake, and obviously our area as well. So I think when we were up there, they mentioned it at a breakfast, and as soon as they said Lake Tahoe, the whole room just went crazy. It was amazing. Anchorage is beautiful, but when they said next year in Tahoe, everyone was it was amazed. And everyone kept coming up to me even afterwards and just saying how so happy they were that it's going to be in this area next year. So I think that's really exciting for us, and, you know, the exposure to, especially for Carson City area too, so. And it was cold up there too, so.
Is
And
Stu
then-
complaining? Is that what was happening while I was gone? Gee whiz.
Although from what I was seeing, I think Carson, the weather here was just as bad as what it was up there in Alaska, really was. And then we have Statina's Pay Dirt Race at the end of May. There was some talk about alternative dates, but we're not sure. We're still waiting on that. They did a walkthrough with the Parks and Rec last week, so I'm waiting to hear what they found on the trails, what kind of snowpack, you know, because a lot of times they have to divert where they're racing because of the snow. So they should be getting back to me by tomorrow and see. But it looks like, from what I'm seeing, the race is going to stay the same dates at the end of May. And in talking to one of the coordinators down there, they're expecting 500 to 700 riders this year coming into Carson over that period of time. So obviously I'll put an RFQ out to the hotels for everyone, but yeah, it's going to be a very busy weekend. Plus, with everything going on, the holiday, you know, Mother's Day and all that, it's going to be pretty busy.
What was the number last year, the count, right, participants, do you remember?
I believe it was about,
Four
yeah, not
something,
quite.
Stacy?
Yeah, about 460, 450, 460, because it was just coming off COVID.
Right.
So, yeah, the ridership was not as huge, but yeah, I was talking to them. They are pretty confident we could see 700 riders coming into Carson for this year.
And Stacy, just just for the board, to remind you all, we had the BLM issue. So there was the demand, but we couldn't exceed 500 because of something with the BLM and because of where we ride. So they got the permitting fixed this year, which is what's allowing us to exceed, you know, go 600-700, you know, riders or so. And forgive me for not remembering the exact number, but it was 4 something. I do know that.
Yeah, it was around there. And so the last time I had communication with them, they were about 400 riders, a little bit over that now for registration, and they still have time. So I think we'll see a bigger footprint of who's going to be racing in this area. And then I mentioned it before, but we are doing a Ford Bronco Super Celebration. This is going to be October the 4th to the 6th. And it's going to be happening at Mills Park. They go all over the country and do these celebrations. We are expecting 400 Broncos to be at Mills Park over a 3-day period. And in that, and I've worked with Park and Recs for the permission to, to use Mills Park. So we're working on that now, just the finishing touches. But they are planning on doing adventure rides where they want to take folks to different areas, maybe Virginia City. They're talking about doing off-roading at Prison Hill, and because they do have specially made Broncos that can handle that type of off-road at Prison Hill. So, and in talking to Parks and Rec, after we got down to the details and what it was, they were pretty excited. I think it would be a great deal. And Mills Park seems to be the perfect location. But yeah, it would be 400 Broncos coming to Carson City for a 3-day period. So, and these are old classic Broncos, not the newer ones, obviously. And then, so I was at the NTA back in November. It was held up in Reno. And it was the same format as some of the others where you go table to table. You have a certain amount of time to sell Carson City. So we're finishing up actually. We have a tour coming in October that I worked with at the NTA show. They're going to come in. It's going to be just a group of 30, but they're looking to bring a yearly and make this an annual event where they bring tours in to Carson City maybe once a year. And they actually have taken tours all over the world before. Back in last month, they were just over in Egypt. The tour guide took a group over there. So she's very excited, and we're working on just some of the details. But yeah, it is going to be October. And October seems to be a good time because you're getting out of the peak season a little bit, starting into the shoulder season for our area. And it's really before the weather changes drastically around here. And I think a lot of guide operators see that as a perfect time, right before everything happens. So, but yeah, they're very excited, and they're going to be spending time here in Carson, probably go up to Virginia City. Obviously, the V&T is going to be important, as that is very important to a lot of these tour operators. So, and then I have the IPW. That was the first show I went to last June. The IPW International Powwow is being held in San Antonio for 3 days. And they're expecting in Orlando, there was close to 5,000 people that came in. They're expecting more than that. And that was just coming off COVID as well. And so they're expecting a greater turnout than what they had in Orlando. And I've already requested, and you can request 50 appointments. And I've already been accepted by 20, so we still have time. So yeah, I'll have the full 50 appointments at the show. So, any questions about anything?
Any questions for Stu? Stacy, to answer your question, 662 registered riders for 2022, but they have an attrition piece. So people that don't show up, right, or cancel or whatever. So the actual number that competed was the 500 that we were allowed under the permit. So, and how that broke down too, to show you that this really is out of state. 103 of those were Nevada residents, and not everybody was from just this area, right? And so I don't have that detail, unfortunately, I can't see that. But 559 of those registered were non-Nevada who participated. So just wanted to clarify from the reporting that Carlos provided, those were the numbers. But basically 500 competed, which was our max. True. Yes, you're absolutely right, Member Kim. Yes. All right, so thank you, Stu. Appreciate that. Let's go ahead and move on to 11D, Arts and Culture Update. Deborah Soul, take it away.
Deborah Soul here. Well, there's a few things to share with you about arts and culture over the past few weeks. First of all, I wanted to tell you about the Carson City Arts and Music Festival. It's still in the formative stages, and this is an event that is being led by the Sierra Arts Foundation. They've been really eager to be working more closely with Carson City and to move their focus out of Reno, which would be lovely. And so they're proposing this festival to take place in June on the legislature grounds, primarily an arts festival, arts vendors, but they're looking at potentially introducing a little bit of music along with it. I'm sure we'll have more on that soon. The Mural and Music Festival that you already know about is taking place this fall. The official date for the big celebration is September 29th and 30th now, and that's the weekend where there will be music and celebration at the key mural sites in the downtown area. They're also looking at doing a kickoff event for this festival, really to highlight the fact that murals are going to be created over the summer period for this festival, kicking it off with a mural event at the Brewery Arts Center on June the 2nd and 3rd. So that'll be the kickoff event for this particular event. The Mark Twain mural is finally installed. I don't know if you've had a chance to take it in. I know a few of you were there at the opening unveiling event last week. I don't even have an image of the mural here on the screen because we, of course, had to submit our material for this meeting before the installation itself happened. And we didn't even see the mural come together, nor did the artist, until it was actually on the wall and had been installed. And I think I have to say, and I'm certain I would get the same comments from everybody else, it looks spectacular. It's a really eye-catching, classy mural that the museum is delighted to have as part of its exterior. So if you haven't had a chance to have a look at that, please make a point of going by. And of course, not a surprise either, the majority of my time in the last few weeks and in the next 2 weeks, we'll be going into the Mark Twain Days Festival, which is now only 2 weeks away. So we have an amazing amount of promotional material and marketing that's gone out on this festival. We even have 5,000 programs? Good, which Lydia has been kind enough to circulate copies of to you. So the program itself is an old-fashioned newspaper, and it has information about the festival itself, a little bit about history. It has winning stories from our literary competitions. It has other businesses and locations and destinations that there are other events taking place during the festival. So it's a huge amount of information for people, and it's a keepsake in itself. It's just an unusual program format. We're in the process of finalizing all the details for the festival events and working with our volunteers to ensure that everybody knows exactly where they're supposed to be and when and what they're doing and what our own staff team is doing. Everybody's pitching in and is going to be playing a role in this. And we're pretty excited. Tickets are selling. There's a lot of interest. There are events cropping up right beforehand and afterwards already that people are wanting to capitalize on the Mark Twain event. So yes, I'm sure the next time you hear from me, we'll be talking about numbers and success and stories. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deborah. Any questions for Deborah? Okay.
You're right, the mural does look fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. Really cool. We're beginning our push with some public art. This is great. Thank you, Deborah. 11E, Marketing and PR Update. Lydia Beck, take it away, please.
Thanks, Dave. All right, we have a relatively short agenda today, going through the PR report and some recaps and some travel that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks. But I wanted to start with the PR report. So overall, we had a great March, mostly due to the fact that we actually released our own article on Newswire this month about new and diverse restaurants throughout Carson City. So that alone received 299 placements, including the Associated Press being the #1 outlet that went on. So when we send something out of the Newswire, it costs us about $1,000 to do so, to get that kind of coverage. So it's not something we do really often, but we have a goal of placing stories monthly and throughout the year. And so this was one of those stories, and it was picked up really well. So we placed that, and then we also did an advertorial in an adventure sports journal, including a summer itinerary. And so we'll be featured next to our ad about that. That includes hiking, biking, and water sports. And so we thought that was a really good tie-in for this summer. Now, we also had 2 FAMs that were completed this month. I met with Teresa Bittler, and a huge thanks to Bobby for hosting her and giving her a tour at Stewart Indian School. She stayed here for a night and hit just about every museum. We ate at Eve's Eatery together to get to know each other. She was actually brought in through the Reno Tahoe territory. So KPS3 is actually the agency of record for PR for RTT, and they've been doing a great job since coming on in January. And Teresa was one of those leads that came in, and we were part of her itinerary. I'm going to try to get Dominique's last name correct. Dominique Chauvet, I believe, is with Road Tripping France. He actually reached out to us because he was doing kind of a tour around the Reno Tahoe area. And so for trade and his expenses here, he stayed in Carson City for one night after skiing in Tahoe. Had some rough weather when he came, but he said he had a great time regardless. So I think he really got to see more of our indoor activities, but had a great time in the ski hill when he was here. So he got a true winter itinerary in the Reno Tahoe area. And then from there, in late March, I traveled to LA on behalf of the Reno Tahoe territory to do a media mission, and the next day was also a sales mission with the Las Vegas territory. And so they had some other sales people who were traveling, and I was going to the media mission already, and so I doubled up to cover both of those. So I would say both events were really fruitful. We met with multiple journalists, influencers, and broadcast journalists who are more featured on TV after going to see those travels. Justin Walter, if you remember him back from 2019, he's in the middle picture. We brought him in with our first FAM tour that we ever did, and he was the one who actually did a couple of TV appearances for us. And he's doing that more frequently and has done more work like that. And so we got to meet up again, and we're hoping to bring him back in for the territory, along with a few other leads that came from that media mission, thanks to Travel Nevada. So I would say we'll have a couple of people coming into Carson City in the area because of that mission. And then the following day was the sales mission with the Las Vegas territory. It was a power hour. We had an hour where they came to our table. There was no appointment set. It was really just to learn more. We were the only representation of Northern Nevada that was there. And so we had a lot of people stop by, 28 travel agents, and I exchanged cards and gave them a very short pitch as quickly as I could. And then we did some follow-up with that as well. Personally sent emails, and then also that was also shared with the territory. So I do think that we'll have some great leads from all of those LA travel agents. And my other travel was to Salt Lake City, to the DMA West Tech Summit. I've been to this conference about every year except for the year before. In 2020, it was not held. It's a great conference that is focused in tourism and what's going on really not only just in digital marketing, but in tourism marketing in general. And so they have a 2.5-day conference, and so they have breakouts. So I wanted to give you just some insight on what's new in tourism marketing and happening kind of in the digital world. So the first breakout that we went to was Google Analytics 4. So if you didn't know, the general platform of Google Analytics as we know it is actually sunsetting in July. So if you do any kind of digital marketing or have a website, Google Analytics kind of as you know it is going to be a totally different platform. And so they're sunsetting a lot of things that we're used to seeing, including some metrics that I report on monthly, like bounce rate is going away and being replaced with engagement rate. And so there's a lot of different things that are going more towards engagement on your website instead of just triggers and clicks. So I'll give you more information on that as things continue to roll out, but we've already switched over to this months ago. And so we've kind of been dual reporting. So it's collecting information so that we don't magically just start reporting only from numbers on July on. So we have some storage banked up, and then keep working with KPS 3.2 to make sure that we've got the right events set up and conversions for our website too. So that's been kind of a slow mountain to climb as more information is coming out, but come July, there's no going back. So I will have more reporting on that, and our reports might look a little bit different moving forward come July. So just wanted to prepare you for that. Of course, we talked about vertical video trends and social media and for-year advertising. That was another breakout. So we're doing a lot of things right. So that was a great confirmation, having Zach on board, who does just a killer job for us. It was a fun fact to know that only 16% of social media is actually public, right? So the rest you're sharing, intermingling with each other. So other ways that content is shared is via email, instant messenger, and text messages. So email marketing for us is far from dead. So we will continue to focus on social media and amplify that as much as we can, and really find better ways to have the content that we have and amplify that out to more people. So we're doing many things right. It's good to be better than perfect. was a great piece of advice, but we will continue, what we're doing there. This one was one of the most. The TikTok made me go, but ChatGPT made me stay. Have you guys heard of ChatGPT yet? It's hard not to. It's kind of all over the internet as we know it now. But TikTok had these new stats were pretty mind-blowing to me. So 60% of surveyed TikTok users have become interested in visiting a new destination. That includes a city, a beach, a park, et cetera, after seeing a TikTok, 60%. 35% of them, so approximately 52.5 million people, have traveled or visited a new destination after seeing a TikTok video about it. So 45% of US TikTok millennials, who are the ones who are looking to really travel the most right now or spend the most on travel, the ones who were surveyed have traveled to a new destination they saw on TikTok. 32% of those surveyed have booked a stay at a new resort or hotel that they saw on TikTok. And lastly, 28% have actually visited an attraction that they saw on TikTok. So it is an undeniable monster of driving travel that can't be ignored anymore, and we haven't been ignoring it. So we partner with 2 content creators that create TikToks for us, and we actually what they call whitelist their ads, and so whitelist their content. So we're amplifying their content so it looks like it's authentic or inorganic, but it's not exactly coming from our page alone. Brands have a tough job on TikTok because it is such a personal platform that people are really wanting to learn from friends, family, trusted sources, and it takes a lot of finessing and the right kind of content to really do TikTok right. And so we're continually working on that and learning more. And Zach is also helping me stay on top of those trends so we make sure that we're getting the right content out of there. So ChatGPT was wild to learn more about, and I've been digging into some of that and how we might be able to implement that and other AI into our website and how people search and find Carson City. So that's an ongoing project. But it is interesting that it's only pulling data from 2021 and earlier. I didn't know that. So when I can type in, build me a 7-day itinerary in Carson City, Nevada, some of the stuff is a little bit dated, which makes sense. But it will plug you an itinerary in about 2 seconds. So it'll write blogs, it writes social media content. It's wildly scary. So it's something that I don't think will go away, and something that will continue to be honored. So we'll continue to work on that as well. And the last breakout was email marketing. It's more than just a checklist item. I'll let you read through the rate and the numbers that are posted here, but 99% of consumers check their email every day, almost 20 times per day. And that might be even just a low number for the 20 times per day. So I wanted to give you some benchmarks about, how we're doing. So I wanted to break out the Mark Twain Days audience, which is about just over 700 people, and our Visit Carson City audience. So that Mark Twain Days audience is wildly engaged. We have like a 50% open rate and higher on most of those. And it's just significantly higher because it's such an engaged audience based off of the leads that we got from that. So we're doing really well on our email marketing. And so best practices that can be taken away from that, we are doing a lot of, but could do probably more consistently. So we're trending above average. We have room to improve. But the focus for fiscal year 24, a personal goal of mine, is to make things more automated and more engaging for people who are signing up for our email newsletters, which we get well over 100 a month based off of our Facebook lead ads that collect emails. So we'll be forever kind of tweaking that as things evolve and continue to use those creative content pieces that we've gotten. And that's all for that. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, thank you very much.
Any questions for Lydia? Thank you. And, you know, we're always looking for Chat GPT volunteers, so anybody on the board wants to take a crack at this, better you than me. That's all I'm going to say. So thanks, Lydia.
Already used it.
Have you? Oh, well, Mike just volunteered.
I wish
Say,
I
I
would
have
have had
it
it
pulled
in
up if you have
school.
any things you want to ask it.
To take your tests?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Scary. Scary, though.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to 11F, future agenda items. Does anyone on the board want anything? Yes, go ahead, Stacy.
Can you give us an update, if you know, on the status of the fifth position, I should say?
Yeah, so I just had a call last week with executive office. There's a couple people that have come through, but there are a couple of other people that are trying to get applications in. So I'm hoping that we might be able to have 4 or so, 3 or 4 for the Board of Supervisors next month to be able to.
Okay, so it's not going to
review.
be on the 20th meeting?
No, so the situation with the 20th, Nancy asked if it could not be
Okay, good.
included because of the budget
Yeah,
situation.
we have agenda.
Yes,
budget,
yeah, so she
it's a
already
big
asked about that,
agenda.
and then hopefully that'll give these other 2 folks an opportunity
good.
to submit, but that's what I know as of the end of the end of last week, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, anything else? Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to 11G. So our next meeting will be in this building, May 8th, Monday at 4. And then I also want to remind the board that our budget hearing is tentatively scheduled for Monday, May 22nd at 4 p.m. as well. So I'm hoping that will work with everyone's schedule for the budget hearing. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Jones.
Thanks, David. We'll move on to item 12, board comments or announcements, requests for any information from the board.
I have a couple of announcements.
Go ahead, Board Member Rader.
I'm happy to announce that we're offering our first class at the Stewart Cultural Center and Museum, Cooking with Nettles, with Melanie Smokey. Will be on April 22nd, 1 to 3 p.m. And then also on May 2nd, we have a group called the California Truth and Healing Council visiting Stewart Indian School, but they're also going to be staying up at Tahoe and having a meeting there. It's not going to be 500 rooms or anything like that, but they will be asking boarding school survivors to come out to Stewart on the May 2nd to testify about their school experiences. So there may be some people coming into town for that. And then also the Stewart Father's Day Powwow is June 16th through the 18th.
Thank you. Any other announcements or requests?
I have one small one. It's probably only going to be like 40, 50 room nights, but July 24th to the 28th, they have the Welsh FA, which is the Football Association from the country of Wales, coming over to teach a license. And the candidates will be coming from the Bay Area. I set it up Sunday through Thursday, so we wouldn't get in any of the hotel's way.
At our last Board of Supervisors meeting, we approved Mills Park Master Plan. So some of you may have seen that. It includes pretty extensive changes to Mill Park. Anyway, I'd encourage you to go onto the website for that last meeting just to go over it. But still, fields, where the grass is, to be able to host tournaments if need be. But talking about a pavilion sort of in the middle that would allow for like food truck Fridays or something along those lines. Splash pad over near the pool, couple of more pickleball courts. So, we'll do those things as funding becomes available. It's not, it's a multi-million-dollar plan, so it'll be done as time goes on. And we also approved a contract for the resurfacing of the pool. So that's good news because that'll help with tournaments and whatnot or sporting events there. So that's all I can think of from the city perspective.
Chair, could I ask Member Giammi a quick question? With the master plan, was there any discussion about the roundhouse, the 1.5 arches from?
Yeah, we talked about that at a
Okay.
previous meeting. So that is slated basically to be like sort of up on the corner here. Yeah, with a walkway or a path. You know, the first estimate we got to put that up was significantly beyond what we had allocated by a lot. So the location it essentially is where the V&T actually was, and that was one of the things that I pushed for. I wanted it to be where the V&T physically existed at one point. So, but I don't know what's going to end up happening with that. I mean, like, it was 4 or 5 times more than we had budgeted. It was significantly more money. Because they had to build an infrastructure to attach the bricks can't freestand. So,
Yeah, with them being sandstone, I
Yeah.
think they're porous or something,
Yeah.
and it would collapse on itself
yeah,
hypothetically,
So,
so, yeah.
there,
Okay.
it's pretty extensive. So I'm disappointed by that. And we also, at our next meeting, should be issuing the parameters for the selection of an artist for the roundabout art piece. So we increased, well, we haven't done anything yet, but several of us suggested increasing the allocated funding from 140 to 200,000. And a couple of other things, but that should get, well, it'll get brought up. We'll see whether it gets approved. I suspect it will, but we'll see. And if so, then that would be, hopefully by next summer, we would be into putting that up.
Anyone else? Anything else? With that, we'll move on to item 13, public comment. I don't see any, so we'll move on to our last responsibility, and that's to adjourn. If I can get a motion,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
we're adjourned.